Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Roger Paul, and today we're going to talk a little bit about paper 121, the times of Michael's bestowal. And this is going to be a little bit different today because what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some of the charges that Jesus was giving before he started his bestowal and where the time, life and times of Jesus came from, basically from the midwayers. So I'm going to do something a little different for the reading. We're going to read the first paragraph, then I'm going to go back to paper 120 and show what certain things, why these things were done in this order. We're going to go to the end of paper 121, and it basically explains where all this stuff from the Urantia book compared to the Bible came from. And I want to do it that way because I've done this paper before in 2023. There's four parts to this paper in 2023. And after reviewing it, it does a pretty good job of talking about paper 121. So I wanted to on these things and kind of reinforce them. And then if we decide to, we can go on to paper 122, which is the birth of Christ. So that's my plan for this morning. So let's get started. And I'm going to have my wife read this first paragraph here. I guess I should change it to the first paragraph. Let me point something out before I do that. And that is this. You'll notice here on the slide, there are not on the reading of paper 121, which I did in 2024, but there's also the list of the PowerPoint presentations, like the maps for Jesus, the lands of Jesus. It's got the link for the PowerPoint viewer if you don't have one. And it's also got the following Jesus with maps. It also has paper 121 from 2002. And if we go ahead one paragraph, one slide here, it will have 2025 on this one. And this has also got the previous paper on this page too. So let's start with this one. And my wife is going to read it. Let me mute here.
Okay. 12101, acting under the supervision of a commission of 12 members of the Brotherhood of Urantia Midwayers, conjointly sponsored by the presiding head of our order and the Melchizedek of record. I am the secondary midwayer of one-time attachment to the Apostle Andrew, and I am authorized to place on record the narrative of the life transactions of Jesus of Nazareth, as they were observed by my order of earth creatures, and as they were subsequently partially recorded by the human subject of my temporal guardianship. Knowing how his master so scrupulously avoided leaving written records behind him, Andrew steadfastly refused to multiply copies of his written narrative. A similar attitude on the part of the other apostles of Jesus greatly the writing of the Gospels.
Okay. What I want to do,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I better unmute so that everybody can hear what I have to say. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this is explain first what midwayers are. Midwayers, I am getting a
To hit cancel.
unmute. Unmute. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Now I won't hear myself. Okay, so first thing I want to do is kind of explain what midwayers are. There's two classes of midwayers. There were the midwayers that were created by the Caligastra 100 back 500,000 years ago, and they were the result of the mating of the 100 midwayers in 50 pairs, and they came up with 50,000 midwayers. These were the children of the Caligastra 100. Every fourth child they had was a midwayer, and it was invisible to human beings. The parents could see him, the staff could see him, the angels could all see him, but they were not normal human beings. They were a different class of order. halfway between human and angelic. So that's why they're called midwayers. They're in the midway between the two. Now, the second class of midwayers, now, before I move off of that, 40,000 of those midwayers fell during the Lucifer rebellion, okay, out of 50,000. Now, when Adam and Eve came along, that's where the other group of the secondary midwayers, and they were the children of Adam's son and Adam's wife during that period of time. And every fourth child they had was also invisible or a midwayer, but this was a secondary of midwayer because they were closer to human than they were angelic. So there's two classes of midwayers. Now, during that period of time, there were a couple thousand secondary midwayers created, and about 1,200 of those rebelled during the Lucifer after I don't know, after the Lucifer rebellion too. So after Pentecost, when all the primary and secondary midwayers were taken away in chains, the Father's prison world, the remaining midwayers were the primary, which was a little bit less than 10,000 of the primary and about a little less than 1,200 of the uh, secondary, if I remember the numbers. Don't quote me on that, but it's pretty close. Uh, were still on the planet, so they decided to join together as the Midwayer uh, Brotherhood. Okay, and the Midwayer Brotherhood is what brought the life of Christ back into existence because Christ wanted to, or Jesus wanted to tell his story completely, unlike what the Gospels did. They did bits and pieces and that sort of thing. Now, you're going to find out in this paper that all four of the Gospels written, were based on an original manuscript of Andrew. Andrew wrote notes down during the time of Christ, till about 60 years after Christ's death. And he would not distribute these notes to anybody. But after about 60 years, um, uh, Mark if you remember, Mark was a teenager running around with Jesus during that period of time. So Mark was asked to put together a narrative of Jesus's life by Peter. And so he had a copy of Andrew's notes, and basically all four of the gospels were written based on Mark's written copy of the life of Christ. And it's kind of funny because some of them had parts of one and parts of other, and they only had about 4/5 of the notes from Andrew because they got part of them got destroyed. So all these gospels were basically based on the same thing. And then came along Paul, the apostles, during the writing of these gospels. So during the writing of these gospels, most of the information that got into the four gospels in the Bible was the life of Christ according to Paul. Okay, it was influenced greatly by Paul, not just Jesus. So that's why this revelation to us about the book about the life of Christ is so important. What I want to know, y'all, is this. I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to go back over here to another page, I believe. Oh, okay. It didn't share. Let me try this again. Oh, yeah, it did. Okay. We're good. All right. This is paper 121, and you'll notice in the thing we just read, it basically says that the master so scrupulously avoided leaving written records behind him. Y'all see that? Yes, Roger, since I'm here all by myself except my wife. I'm going to show you from the previous paper when Emmanuel was giving the charges to Jesus before his bestowal. Notice here on charge number 6 under paper 120, section 3, paragraph 7, it says, to the end that you may not necessarily contribute to the creation of subsequent stereotype systems of Urantia, your religious beliefs, or other types of non-progressive religious loyalties, we advise you still further, and this is where the charge comes. Leave no writings behind you on the planet. Y'all see that? Refrain from all writing upon permanent materials. Enjoin your associates to make no images or other likenesses of yourself in the flesh. See that nothing potentially idolatrous is left on the planet at the time of your departure. So, in the story of Jesus, we find out later on when he became fully aware after his baptism of the fact that he was the creator of the local universe. He immediately, before he did anything else, went home and destroyed every tablet, every sign. He used to put signs up for the children as they was growing up, teaching them different things. He destroyed every sign he made. Anything he wrote on, he completely destroyed. Okay? Because charge. He remembered this charge after the baptism because he had full consciousness of who he was at that point. So, do you think that I want to ask you a question? Do you think you go into any Catholic church and most Baptist churches, most Pentecostal and all these, do you think it would make Jesus happy that has an image of himself on a cross in front of each church? He was specifically asked not to do this. No images of himself, right? And what do we all do? We all wear crosses around our necks, right? For years and years and years. But this would not been something that Jesus would have been happy with, okay? Why? Because during his bestowal on this planet, he was not to leave anything that became adulterous, and that's exactly what happened with the cross of Jesus, okay? And the reason it did was because of Paul the apostle. And later on, I'm going to get back to this and explain how that works. But because Paul made Jesus the sacrificial lamb for all sins, instead of teaching the mission of Jesus was the brotherhood of God, the fatherhood of God, and the brotherhood of man. That was his message. It wasn't that he died for everyone's sin. All right. So I wanted to bring that up. Now, I'm going to go back over here to paper 121, and we're going to go all the way to the end of 121. Now, this has got some really interesting stuff in it, and I have covered every bit of this 3 times already in previous papers or previous sessions, and I'm going to post one part of the very last time, which was 2023, out on YouTube every Sunday. Okay, whether we continue on with this Sunday study or whatever. If we don't get more people coming to the study, I'm not going to continue doing this. I'm not going to talk to myself in the air. My wife agreed to come. Let me talk to her today. So if I don't get more people that's interested in coming to this, we may do it on Thursday night, our Thursday night meeting or something like that. I would like to cover the life of Christ again, but apparently Saturdays at noon is not working out for everyone. So anyway, but we're going to go through this today because I think it's very, very important. At the end of this paper is an acknowledgement. See this right here? And I want to go through that with me and my wife sitting here so that everyone understands where this information comes from and the importance of how this information literally is more important than the New Testament. Oh my gosh, he actually said such a horrible thing, right? But it's the truth. Truth is truth, and you can't replace truth. It just is what it is. Jesus wanted to bring this to us apparently in the 1300s, but the world, the ancients of days, didn't feel the world was ready for it. So it was 1934 before this was finally brought to us. And all this information about Jesus's life was recorded by these midwayers and the angels that were associated with Andrew and Jesus during this period of time. So me and my wife are going to read these 4 paragraphs, and I'm going to go through explaining it to you so that you understand. Now, when we're done with this today, I've got posted on Facebook the 2023 version of us going through this paper. There's 4 parts to it. So you can go out there and read the first part. And then next Saturday, you can go out and read the second part. Okay. We may do some stuff on Thursday relating to it. We may not. It depends on how things go after today. So here we go. My wife will read the first paragraph. So it says right there, you don't have to look for it. All these all these writers presented as honest as they possibly can Jesus as they remembered him and as they saw him. But the problem came in because of the espousal of Paul's theology on Christianity. Our Christian beliefs were skewed to the concepts of the life of Christ according to Paul instead of the life of Christ according to Jesus. Okay, that is the point I want to make about this. So, your 4 gospels that you've been reading and I've been reading, I spent tons and tons and tons of time almost memorizing the 4 gospels. Okay, but the problem is this: they have more concepts of the theology of Paul than they do of Jesus. So that's why you need to read this book. If there's nothing else you do in this life, you need to read the life of Christ. This is the guy that came to the earth to save all humanity, including his local universe, all the planets of this local universe, eventually 10,000 of them. He came to this planet not for the salvation of your sins, but the salvation of your soul, and for you to understand that God is your Father and every man, woman, and child is your brother and sister. And if you can believe that, you will wake up on the mansion world someday. Okay? Jesus stressed over and over and over in his life that God the Father forgives your sin. There is nothing you can do that God the Father would not forgive you for. And there's some pretty horrible people in the world. Let me put it that. All right, so let's go on to the next paragraph. Acknowledgement. This is the acknowledgement from the United Midwayers of what they're going to teach us. Okay. One of the most important statements in the book. In carrying out my commission, this is one of the midwayers, the head of the midwayers, to restate the teachings and retell the doings of Jesus of Nazareth. I have drawn freely upon all sources of record and planetary information. In other words, what's already out there. My ruling motive has been to prepare a record which will not only be enlightening to the generation of men now living, but which may also be helpful to all future generations. From the vast store of information made available to me, I have chosen that which is best suited to the accomplishments of this purpose. As far as possible, I have derived my information from purely human sources. In other words, even in this book, they have tried to get everything they could about Jesus' life from purely human sources. When such sources failed, I have resorted to those records which are superhuman. These are the records of the midwayers and the records of the angel. Ideas and concepts of Jesus' life and teachings have been acceptably expressed by a human mind. I invariably gave preference to such apparently human thought patterns. Although I have sought to adjust their verbal expression, the better to conform to our concept of the real meaning and the true import of the Master's life. And as teachings, as far as possible, I have adhered to the actual human concept and thoughts in all my narratives. I well know that those concepts which have had origin in the human mind will prove more acceptable and helpful to all other human minds. When unable to find the necessary concepts in the human records or the human expressions, I have next resorted to the memory resources of my own order of earth creatures, the midwayers. And when that secondary source of information proved inadequate, I have unhesitantly resorted to the superplanetary sources of information. What in the heck is he talking about? He's talking about all the records of every single minute of everything and every move, anything Jesus did in his life. There's a written record of it by the midwayers and the angels, and a data record. In other words, they recorded everything. Okay, so that when you get to the mansion worlds, you'll be able to sit and watch all of Jesus's life, all the way through it. You don't even need me to teach you this because you're going to see it one way or another. All right. So, what they're telling us here is this: when they could not find a human concept that of anything that Jesus taught or said, then they remanded to superhuman sources so that they have the story of Jesus as most accurately as possible. So I'm going to tell you right now, as you read through the Urantia book, you can look up at the end of each one of the sections, I put the Bible verses and stuff. You can click on the Bible verses and read it from the Bible. I've studied this stuff for years, so you can read it right out of the Bible if you want to too. But when you compare the two, you're going to find some difference. It's not going to be exactly like it says in the Bible because they try to get the concepts of Jesus as Jesus wanted to relate them to you, not as Paul wanted to. All right. So let's go down a little bit further here. If I can get a hold of this. Okay. Diane, would you take the next one?
The memoranda which I have collected and from which I have prepared the narrative of the life and teachings of Jesus, aside from the memory of the record of the Apostle Andrew, embrace thought gems and superior concepts of Jesus' teachings, assembled from more than 2,000 human beings who have lived on earth from days of Jesus down to the time of the inditing of these revelations. More correct restatements. The revelatory permission has been utilized only when the human record and human concepts fail to supply an adequate thought pattern. My revelatory commission forbade me to resort to extra human sources of either information or expression until such a time as I could testify that I had failed in my efforts to find the required conceptual expression in purely human sources.
So what does that any of that because I was muted during that whole time.
Want to try it again?
Let's try this again. All right. So what they're trying to tell us here is that they assembled this record of Jesus's life from over 2,000 different human beings, all the way down until the time of this writing. So there's lots and lots of concepts from every religious person that said anything about Jesus's life, all the way down to the time they wrote this book. I mean, this Revelation. Okay. And they resorted to the superhuman concepts only when they couldn't find a concept that somebody else had said, okay, at one time or another. So his commission, being in the revelatory commission, head up by Melchizedek, forbid him to use extra human resources until he couldn't find that expression anywhere in human minds. Okay. So I just repeated myself. I hope y'all didn't have to listen to me twice all the way through. All right. Diane.
Well, I, with the collaboration of my 11 associate fellow midwayers and under the supervision of the Melchizedek of record, have portrayed this narrative in accordance with my concept of its effective arrangement and in response to my choice of immediate expression. Nevertheless, the majority of the ideas, even some of the effective expressions, which I have thus utilized, had their origin in the minds of the men of many races who have lived on earth during the intervening generations, right on down to those who are still alive at the time of this undertaking. In many ways, I have served more as a collector and editor than as an original narrator. I have unhesitatingly appropriated those and concepts, preferably human, which would enable me to create the most effective portrayal. Portraiture. I can't say it. Portraiture. Okay, sorry. Of Jesus' life, and which would qualify me to restate his matchless teachings in the most strikingly helpful and universally uplifting phraseology. In behalf of the Brotherhood of the United Midwayers of UM, I most gratefully acknowledge our indebtedness to all sources of record and concept, which have been hereafter utilized in the further elaboration of our restatement of Jesus' life on earth.
Okay, so that's it. That's their statement of basically why they did it, when they did it, what the idea behind rewriting or retelling the story of Jesus was. Okay, and that's really all I have to say today.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
The rest of it,